Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor here. Today I'm going to give you another bolo, holiday related. Valentine's Day is fast approaching, and those type of items are good bolos that you can make some money for, but you got to be sourcing them now. You've got to be getting ready to get them up prior to the holiday. A lot of people make stuff and do crafts with vintage paper items that are Valentine related, so I always look for them. I don't put them up till the end of the year usually, unless I have a huge bunch of them and something to tie them with. Okay, so today it's Valentine's Day. I've talked about it before in some other videos, and I have shown many that we've gotten and sold. I sell a lot of Valentine's Day items. This is the time you need to start to get them up and have them up in the next week if you've got any of these items sitting around. February is, Valentine's Day. It's coming up just around the corner. We've just got through fourth quarter. We're now first quarter. It's just something I do. I already had some of these going up in December, but with the family issues, I haven't gotten them all up yet. But they are on their way up now. It doesn't necessarily have to be Valentine's cards per se. There's many different varieties as well. Now, this is a Valentine insult postcards. These are a Topps Chewing Gum Company thing. They don't show up very often, but again, if you don't know, you might not buy it. This is an empty box. Nothing in it. Just an empty box for these things. Something you might expect to find for, $15-20 maybe at the most in some junk sale. No one would probably even know what this was for the most part. Just might think it's junk. I do find boxes like these dirt cheap because there's nothing in them. Most people think, who's going to buy it? And even if they throw $20 on it as a lark and it sells, they're fine. That's what I personally see. So I do end up finding empty boxes from time to time. Sometimes a whole bunch all at once that were just thrown aside. No one thought anything of it, and they left the boxes and bought all the cards. And that does happen, believe it or not. Again, holidays coming up, so again, we're going to show you some of these items. Now, this is a early... I don't think it has a date, but 1880s, 1870s. This is more than likely a British card. It's sold for $422. I find things similar to this. This one's a little bit more intricate than most with the actual paper lacing as you see it. The machine that did this one was a very expensive machine for the time and day, I would say. The center has like an accordion thing, and this was very typical back then. I run into stuff like this quite often, believe it or not. The gold part you see up there, that's considered Dresden. Most of these are made in Germany to begin with. Dresden's an area in Europe and German area. It's the state of Germany, or it was at one time. Rather interesting, but it sold very well. Most of these kind of cards do go to English purchasers. From my personal experience, not all of them, but most of the high dollar ones are the paper lace. Either they're sold from over there or they sell over there. That's just what I've seen with these really fancy ones. These are something that would have been put together by somebody for the most part. They would have bought one piece like the lace part. They would have glued it to the card. The coloring could have been added extra. You'll see die cuts and paper cards all mixed up, all made. People do recreations of these still to this day. I sell particles and pieces and parts of things all the time for reconstruction and items to match this styling. Once they're out of my hands, it's hard to say what anybody does, but I know there's quite a few that do stuff like that for it. I have people, now I've got quite a few now these days that buy just religious cards from me, and they'll do things with those too. But these are all Valentine Day cards. 1850, it's a really earlier one. This is 1840s, 1850s, maybe even a little newer. This is typical. This looks to be hand stamped out. So basically it was hand pressed from what I see here, or it was written by hand, which you will see as well too. Either or. I'm not going to delve into that part. It's just what it is what makes it the interesting part. Now these Rebus puzzles are where a symbol takes the place of a word or part of a word. They still make them to this day. I find many of them. You'll find them even on postcards and things along that line. There's even games and stuff that have this on it. This one went for $150. Now here is I'm not sure what you actually want to call this part, but it's honeycombed as far as I would say. It's a very spectacular one here in my opinion for the condition. I can't say without actually touching it if it's an original, so I'm not going to jump in on that one here. Founded a Dodge Brothers family member. That means nothing actually. Germany. Let's take a closer look. Yeah, it's still hard to say. It looks like it could be newer, but you know, it's deceiving on some of these. It's a trike, basically. So it's pretty neat item. Either way, even if it's a newer one, say 1920s, I would say would be a newer one, it's still very nice. Looking at the text, I would say it's 1890s. I would say this is probably pretty legit. It's got some foxing. Those little brown spots are called foxing. $112. Now, set the record straight, you're not going to find a ton of any of these items here. In most of what I sell, you probably won't find a ton. I find a lot of some of the items I look for, and I do mean a lot. But I've got years of sourcing on many people, and I've got a little ring of people and area that I can cover with that ring. So that's what you just got to do with stuff like this and be able to find it. You can buy bulk paper quite a few places, but to get good bulk items, you know, it takes some skill. You know, and that's where time comes into this too. So you got to be willing to work hard at this. This is rather interesting. Some of these fold out and they do actions where maybe a tire would have spun. Yeah, these look like the wheels actually move. Let's see if we can see the back on this one here. I'm sure they got it. Yeah. And usually if you look at the back, this does look like legit. It's probably not 1890s, I would guess, by the color of the paper and what I personally see. It's probably like 1910, 1915 would be my guess. And you can see how it folds out here, too. Yeah, it's got some damage. Now, some people will repair these. They'll replace the accordion mechanisms, the cardboard strips that you see there, because those routinely break. Now, I have glued some back together. I covered pop-up books in a art class I took, so I have some knowledge, some working knowledge on some of the constructions to get these things to open up. And we've created some pop-up cards that I used to do one-offs on, and we used to sell too. So it's just an area that you can make some money in. Pop-up books I've always loved since I was a child, and some of them are just spectacular. If you haven't seen some really nice ones, I would recommend digging into it and looking into them a little more. $112 on this one. Now here's a Superman one. There's probably 5 or 6 big size Superman ones like this that I've seen. Most of them have actions where something moves. There's like a weightlifter boy too, and if you see, it's copyright Superman Inc. This is before technically, I'm not sure the DC Comics, but I think DC Comics came in from Detective Comics. But again, I could be wrong. I used to know some of that stuff or pay attention to it, but I'm not a comic book collector anymore these days. I did years back, 20, 30, 40 years ago, but anyway, this is a nice one. $69. Again, you're not going to find a ton of these. Most of what you'll find will only be worth selling as bulk lots, like 90% or better. You'll get lucky when you buy big, huge lots of them at like an estate sale or at like a live auction or something like that. And then you can pick out and sell the better ones for, you know, top dollar and then still bulk out the rest. But that's the only way these work for finding them. Now, I've shown many. I've got hundreds of these, but I buy, you know, thousands of these, you know, a year or more than that in general. We buy them, you know, estate sales are always the best for paper for us anyway. Again, it depends on the estate sale. There are local live auctions. We do drive sometimes a few hours to get to a real good paper auction that's, you know, featured regionally or something like that. But $69. Here's another one. This is just a cute image. Some of these individually sell very well. This one went for $60. They've got new, but it's just unused. It's a vintage card. And there's some Roman numerals. That's usually what you'll see on most of these. It's 1949 is when this was made. It's an early one. Barker was a known company. You'll see these type of cards. $60 on this one. And now the cuteness sells on these. Now this is 20s or 30s. They've got 20s, but probably 20s or 30s based on what I've seen in these and had. And again, I see hundreds and hundreds of these. The whale's mouth opens up. I've seen this one before. It's a known card. It's not like some obscure thing. It's not huge. Some of these are large. You'll find huge ones that were made to stand up on like somebody's dresser or something like that too. But any of these cutesy ones, the whale ones always seem to sell. Most of the ones that sell the most are character ones like comic book or movie or TV related, like Popeye or a Disney movie or something like that. And then you'll see some from like the 50s that might be, you know, Western related from TV shows or radio shows. Spy Smasher or something, or Superman as we showed. Disney sells, there's a bunch of knockoff Disneys. And then mechanicals and then the honeycomb ones or real early ones. Other than that, most of the newer stuff doesn't sell. Some of the early Hallmark, though, does sell. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be Valentine's Day cards for Hallmarks to sell, but Hallmarks from the 30s necessarily show up all the time for me anyway. But, you know, I've got specialty places we look, and people that actually know more information on digging locally than I do, or, you know, that I spend the time on anyway, I should say. $68. We'll just flip through a few more here, as I said. This is a pretty neat one. 1890s, 1910 would be my guess, just by the coloring and such forth. You can get to tell how old some of these are just by the coloring, because certain colors weren't used in certain eras. You just wouldn't see it, I guess you could say. And you'll get the gist of it after a while. And then you'll see how they're marked, and you can kind of tell on that too. So any paper item can be judged by those factors. So it doesn't have to be this type. It could be a postcard. It could be anything. Can be judged by certain factors on the quality of the printing, the stylization, and things like that. Now here's a lot of them. It's 10 for $40. Now here's one where you could have probably done a little better. That Superman on its own goes for like $20, 24 on a good day. Girl carrying the firecracker, it's a mechanical one too. I've had that one. That one sells. The little house on the bottom can sell. So this one was a decent lot. You've got a gypsy with a crystal ball in here as well too. So, you know, there's some subject matter. The football one has a $6 to say $12 range on that one. And most sports have, you know, a $5 plus range on them. So it may not sound like a lot, but if you get like say 100 of these at a estate sale, still with the envelopes and stuff, always better with the envelopes. And you get some really cute ones out of there. Maybe you spend $20 on them. You might get $10-15 for a couple of those right off the bat. Get your money back out of those, and then you've got a bunch to sell, and you'll have residual income coming in. So you'll have money coming in off that. At the end of the day, at the end of a year, you may have quadrupled your money, even after all the fees are said and done. So, and if you don't sell them, you throw them in a lot together with some other ones, and boom, they're out the door anyway. There's just so many ways to sell the paper. You know, get your money back, and then what happens is what happens after that. So if you need to chunk them off to get the money coming back in, boom, you're going to make a profit as long as you pay attention to research everything. Don't buy it if you're not sure. You know, I hear people saying, well, I don't want to get stung, this, that. You know, stuff can happen. If you don't know, don't buy it. Unless it's dirt cheap and you don't mind wasting or taking a chance on something. If you don't know, don't buy it. I can't say that anymore very plainly. I get that all the time where I bought this, you know, I thought this was going to be worth some money. Well, you didn't look it up. You know, look it up. Know what it is. Let's see here. Sailor Moon. I sell Sailor Moon anything. Clio's a known company. They do a lot of the, like, Hello Kitty and things like that, too. Even Hello Kitty Valentine sells. Star Wars ones will sell. Anything that's popular, even the Marvel comic book ones, for example there. So I buy this kind of stuff. $40. I would have charged shipping, of course, because that's what we always do. These kind I do find as well, too. This is like 20s, 30s. It's more graphical. These were expensive. Signed or not, I don't care if they're signed or not. I will still take a jab at them when they're signed. You know, with the person's name on it. But these are fabulous ones here, too. $36. I would have charged shipping. It cost $3.50 to mail something like this for me. You know, after a while of doing this, you should be able to know exactly how much it costs to mail almost any of these paper items right off the bat. No question about it. I mail everything the same way. That way there's no switching around. I can say without a doubt while I'm listing it what the weight's going to be. Like a board game, typical board games like in the 3-pound, depending on how you wrap it. And, you know, I wrap it very well, so it's just over 2 pounds, so it falls in the 3-pound. And that's any board game. Almost anyone out there, that's what it costs. You know, Trivial Pursuit or something like that would cost more. Magazines are £1 or less. 12 to 11 ounces for the typical standard one that goes first class. And it's out the door. Comic books are around 6 to 7 ounces. A 7-inch record, 45 record, weighs 9 ounces. The average 78 record box with paper is 2 pounds and like 6 ounces, so it goes out for a 3-pound weight. Shipped media. You should know this stuff. You know, obviously if you're new, it's not going to be something in the top of your head, but it saves you time at the end of the day. So when you're listing something, you know, you should have a real good roundabout thought in your head on how much it should cost, where it should be listed. You know, all that kind of stuff plays into this. So Here's a Disney one, perfect example. It's mechanical. And those are paper fasteners that's connected. Both arms and his head are on one single brass pivot, one fastener in that turn. So when he brushes, the bucket goes up on the other end. This is a standard construction. The bottom has a fold-out leg. And again, I did take some of this in a college class on some art, and we covered stuff like this. So I've used this. We've printed our own occasionally, too. You know I print postcards of my own artwork, so I've delved into all kinds of stuff, including hold to the light cards. There are other people like me that do sell their own hold to the light cards, modern day ones, so nothing's out of question. This one's the lever action, as you can see there. And again, this is just one solid piece, the head, the arm, and the little stick that holds the heart over there, and it's just held together by one brass paper fastener. That's it. You know, and there's a tool that puts those in. You can buy all this stuff modern. So if you want to recreate these as a business, which people do honestly do, they started off selling them in craft shows and things like that. So there's a way in, and then once you get better at it, you can do some fancier ones. Hand done, of course, sells the best. So, you know, if you hand painted something just adorable or something, I'm not telling you to do Disney because that would be copyrighted, but, you know, there's a ton of other things that people can do. Here's just another cute one. I think this was, Hallmark. Hall Brothers is what you'll see on the backs of many of these. And it says it down there, copyright Hall Brothers. Hallmark is the name I look for. This is, I think, is this a 30s one? Yeah, I can't see the date on here, but usually they're marked 30s. It looks more like a 50s to me. Yeah, 50s right up there, sorry. But the ones that are embellished sell better. This one has like little sparkles, it looks like, maybe on it. I sell quite a few of the Hallmark cards. If they're sci-fi 40s and 50s and they're Hallmark, you got like $40, no matter what. And sometimes I have a bunch up right now where it's Santa Claus climbing out of a rocket. Probably from the 60s. I bought a whole box of them. Wasn't going to sell them as a box, and I put them up on eBay. They've been up for 18 months, if that tells you something. I got $2 into all of them. I sold 6 or 7 of these things for $57.50. They're nothing. They're something, you know, I get all the time. I have sources to buy 50s and 60s cards in huge bulk, whether they're used or unused, but I'm talking huge mega bulk. Sometimes I can get 2,000 or 3,000 cards, you know, pre-vintage 70 and down in lots, you know, for a relatively reasonable amount. Now, I know what to buy. I know, you know, when I'm looking through these things. I'm not going to tell you to jump on something like that just by sheer quantity. People get that wrong all the time. Quantity does not mean quality. But let's move on here. Mechanical. He pulls out the flowers, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of these are known. You'll see them, or it'll be a different figure, but the same everything else. And this is a military. It's World War II-ish. It's Marine, so it sold for $34. They paid shipping too, which again I don't do. Now here's another one. This is a fake one. It's not a fake vintage card, but it's a fake Disney. This is back in the day when patents and copyrights were avoidable. I don't believe this is a legit piece, and you'll see many of these from Germany as well too that look like Disney, but they're not. I don't know of any Disney one from this era that didn't have Disney Enterprises on it. Enterprise being the original logo you would see on it, Walt Disney Enterprises, and then it was Productions and things, and I think it's Walt Disney Company these days. But I always look for Enterprise on most things. This should have been marked because they're both there. It wasn't just Mickey in the early heyday. So, you know, and it's damaged too. Either way, $32. I would have still marked it as a Disney, Mickey, and Minnie Mouse. That's basically what it is. Now, this is from Topps again. Any of the Universal, down at the bottom, you'll see T.C.G. That's Topps chewing gum, if you didn't know. Anything that says TCG, and there's many other items, postcards and things like that say that as well, too. So I always pay attention to that. And like here, you can see that it was punched a little too far through. The old machines were like that, so that doesn't deter me from buying it either. The single card from this set, I think there's like 60 to this set. It's like $30 for this one. It's a rare set. So anything from this, there's Dracula, there's tons of different ones. They're all like Valentine card stickers. They were in packs just like Star Wars cards were. So any of these, and they're all Valentine's related. Some people wouldn't know that's what that was, so just keep that in mind. I think this is, yeah, this is an official one. Hallmark had a license, but you see right there, Walt Disney Enterprises. That's what it should say if it's a legit piece. Now, I'm not saying the piece wouldn't be vintage if it had Disney characters and, doesn't have any of that information on it. It wouldn't be a legit licensed piece. Back then, the licenses weren't as enforced as they are these days with all the stuff. But this is a nice one. It's Hallmark, so I would have yanked on this one in a second, and it would have been in my hands. This is the type that you want. And they do show up. I can still get some of these sometimes at sales for $3, $4, $5. I would have paid $5 for this in a second. I would have probably paid $8. That would probably be about my max. Maybe if it was something a little nicer, a little more color from the same date, maybe Mickey, I would have probably went up to 10 or 12 possibly, knowing that I would eventually get 30 to 40 or more for that piece. So everything doesn't have to be cheap, but I try to keep everything cheap. I would pass on many things if they're higher dollar, even if I could make a quick turnaround, just because it's never good to float out inventory costs. That's part of your business, is storing it and warehousing it. So it costs most people money. For me, it's dirt cheap, and I can keep jamming as much as I want at the rate we sell it. But, it doesn't work that way for everybody. Here's another one. Now, this one's 3D, meaning that the phone sticks off the card. Anything like this seems to go. This is a phone. There's a ton of phone collectors that just love this kind of stuff, and it's a Hallmark. I don't think it has a specific date. Yeah, there's a bunch that didn't. This is a little newer because it doesn't say Hall Brothers. You can kind of tell. 50s by the phone as well. This is basically $30 with several bidders, and the bidder had to pay shipping. Alice in Wonderland. Now, we're working on a series from Alice in Wonderland ourselves. It is free to use the original from the 50s, 1850s. You can't do anything with the Disney one, so don't try and copy their characters. But the original artwork is actually, public domain, so you can do anything you want with it. You can do anything you want with the story itself, too, believe it or not. It's all public domain. There's a lot of public domain that people are surprised. Now, when you think about Alice in Wonderland, you think about Disney. Oh, yeah, I can't do that, but I'm not talking about Disney. This is, a takeoff. I would say that's supposed to be Alice, the Queen of Hearts, of course. So, yeah, and it says Alice in Wonderland game. So, anyway, $28.55. Wizard of Oz. Now, I love the Wizard of Oz. There's some really nice ones. I've got about half a dozen Wizard of Oz ones from the original release of the movie. This is, I would say this is probably an original era, but maybe not. Lowe's Incorporated for Motion Picture Wizard of Oz. This is probably original. They've got 40s, but this is probably from the original release would be my guess. That's when most of these that I've personally had and still have come from. And I'm going to be putting them up, as I said, just because this is the time you want to do it. So, again, another call out, start getting your Valentines up for those of you who do mess with seasonal paper items like I do. So, anyway, $24.99. That's average on most of these. $15 or more on any of the Wizard of Oz ones that I have sold. So I know somebody's going to come out and shout at me and say, hey, there's hundreds of these up. Not the original ones, there's not. There's hundreds of maybe Wizard of Oz ones, or maybe 50. I don't even know how many's up now, but there's not many of these original 30s and 40s ones. If it says Lowe's, it's probably a vintage original. This is just a Halloween ghost. These ghost things always sell. It's cute. It's just something interesting. I would have snapped up on that too. It's probably 50s or 60s, but it's hard to say just by the markings on there. Sometimes you can tell by the signatures how that looks. 50s would be my guess. I'd say just flat out 50s. $24.64. And one more here. This is a fold-out one from the Victorian era. Now, this is a real one. This would be, and it's Raphael Tuck, so there's no doubt that this is an original. Raphael Tuck is a name I always talk about. Looking at how it's written, this is a little later one than I would like, but it's still key. Prime time, Raphael Tuck and Sons era. And you can see it folded out here. Rather nice. I think, yeah, there's the top honeycomb still works. And this is what you would see. This cost a lot of money back then. That's why these still sell for 60 plus bucks. Most of this kind of stuff is, a dime a dozen, even for most of these fold outs. So I don't buy or spend more than $1 or so on any fold out. If it's something really spectacular, maybe a couple bucks. If it's Raphael Tuck, maybe much more than that. $5 or $10 on something like that. But it has to be complete and no damage. I can replace the posts that hold this up, but I don't like to do that. I would just assume not mess with fixing something if I don't have to, but it is something conceivably easily done as well too. And I do show some of that in my Patreon group, so if you're not a member and you want to see a little something different, I do go into that. Every dime that we raise from Patreon or even here on YouTube goes right back into the channel. You know that there's not a lot of money into this, so you know, I do love talking about what I do. Some point maybe it might turn into making a little profit, and I don't have to worry. I do pay somebody to help do my videos and for the live feed we do every Thursday night, 7 Eastern Standard Time. But anyway. And if you're unaware, I did add a outro, new ending to our videos. It's going to be from now on. We're going to start calling out all of our supporters in every video from now on. So if they're funding us or helping to fund the channel while the video is up, your name's going to be in there, you know, from now on. You know, we're not going to take them down if somebody's no longer, but once you're in there. So just kind of want to make sure that we're calling and giving recognition to those that really help our channel. We're still growing. I do get, you know, quite a few a day, the new subs. So, you know, obviously we want to be as big as possible, where we can actually do even better content. I've got a whole new concept video coming out real soon here. We've got a lot of time into this one coming out here. It's going to be, I'll leave it as a surprise, but it's going to be an unannounced, just pop up a new video style coming out here soon too. And for those of you in the Patreon, as I said, I do have more videos coming out for Patreon as well. So specifically this week, we've shot a complete video, and then I've got some questions in another one. One of my other subscribers too had thrown in some questions on my Patreon. So I just want to get everybody answered. Life's back to normal here for us for the most part until some more tests on the 10th. But after that, we will, who knows. So anyway, that is what I have for you today. This one went for $62.51. Again, don't buy them unless they're in tip-top condition. Well, there you go. There's some more items that I look for. We put up Valentine's Day pretty much every year around the same time, several months in advance so that they're ready to go. I always look for them. I'm always able to at least buy several huge lots of them throughout the year. Sometimes I find them almost every single month, a couple here, a couple there, or big, huge chunks and lots of them. So just keep your eyes open. It's a good investment. It can net you some good profit as long as you're not sinking too much money into it. You've done your homework and you know what to spend on the items. But that's what I have for you. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.